The U.S. Supreme Court has just given individual states the right to entertain single-game sports bets, something that will generate billions of dollars in new revenue. How much do you want to bet that Canada's federal government will continue to screw up the sports wagering file on this side of the border? Earlier this month, in a 6-3 vote, the U.S. Supreme Court struck down the Professional and Amateur Sports Protection Act of 1992. Translation: whereas Nevada used to be the only state where one could place a legal bet on a sporting event, now all states can take part. Already 18 states have introduced legislation to legalize sports wagering. More are expected to follow. The Supreme's made a good and just decision here. If people want to place a bet on the Super Bowl, they should be free to do so without having to set up an offshore account or dealing with Vinny on Pier 5. Sports wagering has been going on since the very inception of sports, and declaring such wagering illegal only fuels the gray and black markets. So what does this decision mean for Canada? Well, it means a lot. Because in our great dominion, sports wagering has been legal at all the provincial lottery corporations for decades, but under the criminal code, a bettor has to wager on at least 2 games at a time. Single game wagers are not permitted, even though betting on 1 game at a time is by far the most popular way people like to bet. This restriction is inexplicable. It's as though the government just wants to be a little bit pregnant when it comes to sports gambling. And what is the result? Well, if you're like me and untold thousands of Canadians, you simply open an account with an offshore betting service such as bet365.com based out of the UK. Apparently, the Canadian government is unaware of this little communications conveyance called the internet. All one needs today to place a single game bet is a valid credit card. And hey, if the government won't let me bet legally here in Ontario, and it wants to surrender all this moolah to foreign entities, then, well, so be it. But the money drain will only worsen when American border casinos offer sports books to entertain single-game bets. So it is, for example, that Southern Ontarians will simply shuffle off to casinos in Buffalo or Niagara Falls, New York, in order to place their single-game wagers. And hey, while they're there, they may as well play the slots and table games, money, by the way, that would have been spent in a Canadian casino if such a Canadian casino allowed single-game sports betting. But here's the added tragedy. In 2012, the NDP sponsored a private member's bill that would have allowed single sports wagers in Canada. And get this, this bill was approved by all federal political parties. But the Senate, apparently concerned that Canadians would bet the milk money on football games, stalled the legislation until the 2015 federal election was called, which meant that Bill C-290 died on the order table. It was one of the most despicable examples of nanny statism carried out by our unelected and non-accountable Senate. But the plot thickens because last year, the NDP reintroduced this bill. Alas, this bill is doomed because the Liberals, who supported Bill C-290 when they were in opposition 6 years ago, are now inexplicably opposed to single-event sports wagering. That's weird. All of which means billions and billions of dollars of Canadian wagers will continue to migrate over the border and offshore. Gee, you'd think that Justin Trudeau would support a new source of revenue for the nation. After all, he has so many schemes that need to be financed, such as migrant resettlement. But I guess when you're a trust fund millionaire who has barely worked a day in the real world, you live in an economic bubble. After all, the budget, it's going to balance itself, don't you know? For the Rebel.media, I'm David the Menzoid Menzies. Hey folks, did we have a super event planned for Saturday, June the 2nd in Toronto? It's our 2nd annual Rebel Live. We have Katie Hopkins, Sheila Gunn-Reid, the Big Boss Man Ezra Levant, John Cardello, so many others. Go to therebellive.com, get your tickets today. Don't you dare miss it.